Hello and welcome to Chapter 4. We're on the first treatise, and Chapter 4 in that treatise is called The Center of the Universe. So we begin again, of course, this entire treatise is about the art of thought. So we begin with the idea of the art of thought is the miracle. So when you chose your miracle in the previous chapter and he asked you to choose a miracle that you wanted to have performed, the ego mind automatically chose something specific, a specific thing like I want a car, I want a new job, I want this skill, I want that. This is a habit of the ego mind that needs to be changed in order for all your thoughts to become miracles. So he's pointing that out to us. We automatically go to something specific that we want because that's what the ego mind does. He tells us in verse 3, prayer and the art of thought are the same. Miracles are, in other words, a way of thinking. They are your natural state. So we need to go from the specific out to the general. It's not changing something in form, it's actually coming back to our natural state of thought. So how does the art of thought work? Well, rule number 1, he gives us 2 rules in this section. The first one is to experience what is, both as a human being and as a divine gift. Now, this what is actually developing an intimacy with whatever is presenting itself in your experience right now. It's the same thing that Byron Katie talks about in Loving What Is. It's your present moment experience, what's showing up on the screen of your awareness. So he's asking us to experience whatever is showing up as both a human being. So we're experiencing it through a body and through the setting of human form, and experiencing it as a divine gift. So both parts of the self are brought into play. This is a unified activity. Verse 4, yourself is what is in need of identification and acknowledgement. So in this process, it's not actually your end result that we're looking at. That's not the goal. The goal is identifying and acknowledging who it is you actually are. This is a call to be aware of the experience of the self in the present moment. We're loving what is. We see the self as more than an object, more than a body. We see the self as awareness of the present moment experience. So think about that. We normally think of ourselves as I'm over here and you're over there. We're different from whatever else is happening. We are an object, a body that's at a certain location in time and space. And this is seeing, this way is seeing it as more of you are the awareness of what is happening in the present moment. That's a whole other level. Seeing yourself simply as awareness. And if you drop and try to experience that right now, it's there. It's always there. So when we identify with ourselves as the body, as an object, as a person, we are really seeing the very narrow view. And he's asking us to identify as the awareness of my experience in this moment. So moving on to rule 2, which actually has 3 parts. The first is to acknowledge that you're in relationship with what is present in this moment. So whatever is presenting itself on the screen of your awareness is not a dead thing. It's alive. and you're in relationship with it, whatever it is. And 2, recognize that there's a call for a response, an answer to what is present. So this takes us beyond the role of the witness who's just watching. Watch what shows up, watch what you feel. This is calling for a response from whatever's happening, to whatever's happening. And the 3rd, realize that you are given to all, and all is given to you. Now this takes us to a place of recognizing our unity. When you're in that place of awareness and you realize that you are there as a gift to whatever is presenting itself. And whatever is presenting itself is there as a gift to you. So you are truly in relationship with whatever this moment is offering you. Now the ego mind approach is completely different. This is what we're accustomed to. We're accustomed to seeing ourselves as a body mind, a separate entity. And the mind will constantly do one of 2 things. It'll either glorify the separated self, at least I'm not that stupid, at least I'm a good person, I did that well, I'm living according to the principles that I think are right. Or it'll subjugate the separated self. Oh, nobody loves me, no wonder I'm not lovable. I didn't do that as well as I should have. So it's this constant going between these 2 polarities that we're never really in the right place in our minds. And this system created the laws of man, which are based on the survival of the body. So when we identify as the body, that's why there's this big panic thing. Because if the body doesn't survive, and I think I'm the body, I think I'm not going to survive. But now our responsibilities shift. Formerly, your thoughts were about what is outside of you, experiencing life as a separated being. Here I am, I'm walking along in my life, these things I come across my path, and I think about their influence on me and how I should think about them and respond to them. Now, your thoughts are a response from the self. Everything comes from within. So now, here I am as awareness, and as something crosses my path of awareness, and I respond to it. In order to respond to it, I have to go within. I have to connect to my own self, capital S, in order to respond to what's happening in this moment from that place of presence. So it's a real shift in the way we operate. Now we're going to talk about respond versus responsibility, because this is really a key point in how we view our role in the world. So he says, think of all you feel responsible for. In verse 10, you keep others other by attempting to respond for them rather than responding to them. You thus have thought it your responsibility to care for the world outside of yourself rather than for yourself. This is a big deal right here. If you really, really look at that in your life, you can see the great truth in it. We try to anticipate what other people need for us, and we give them what we anticipate they're going to want instead of allowing them to respond as they respond. So we anticipate how they're going to feel, how they're going to act, what they're going to be impressed by, what they're going to be incensed by. And so we've taken everything away from them in our own desire to respond for them. And it's created this whole matrix where we think we're responsible for everything that happens. Now, this is not to be confused with the victim syndrome. It's not even close to it at all. It doesn't mean you're a victim. It just means you're a responder. So we've got respond versus responsibility. We've actually confused the two concepts. Verse 13. Responsibility but implies a guardianship that is not needed. Responsibility implies needs that would not be met without you. Response is given and thus genuine. It is a natural act of giving and receiving as one. So if I feel responsible for how you feel about this video, then I'm going to spend all my thoughts and energy trying to anticipate what your needs are and what you need to hear. And I'll probably miss the mark. But if I am just willing to respond, it's coming from a genuine place. And it's a natural thing that I just give what I experience and I receive whatever's there. And so that's not the greatest example, but it's an example of the fact that you're not responsible for how people respond to you. You're responsible for your own responses. That's it. So he gives us some examples in the chapter, and I've kind of used them here, the difference between responsibility and response, so we can see. So responsibility, charity, comes from a sense of responsibility. I have a lot of stuff, and I should be giving to people who don't, so I'm going to do that because I'm responsible for my brother and sisters. Response comes from a genuine place. I love them. I don't want them to suffer. Here, can you take this? Can you use this? What do you need? See the difference? Responsibility. You can have a responsible father who provides all of the basic things that his family needs, his children need in order to thrive. Shoes and clothes and schools and food and tutors and therapists and whatever else they need. He can be responsible really that way. But that is very different from a loving father who is tuned into his children and really can sense what it is that they need and want and responds to them from love. Look at the difference between a talented dancer or singer who has studied all the moves, who knows exactly what to do, and can really perform a dance the way it needs, that the classical people would say it could be performed. Contrast that with a joyful dancer, someone who is so loving what she or he is doing that their body just jumps with the joy of dance. And they may not even be technically trained as the talented dancer is, but there's something about that energy that follows them that's true and pure and authentic. And then on a bigger level, think of how we have imagined a judging God. And that judging God has set up morals and values that we have taken on. You'd better do this right. Or on the other side, a responsive creator. One that creates love from love and responds to whatever happens from within that creation. So hopefully that helps us see the difference. Verse 16, he tells us, my request to you to choose a miracle is but a request to you to hear creation's response to who you are. It is a response of pure appreciation and love. It is always available. It is the gift given in everything you look upon and see, without the obstacle of the ego mind's interpretation. And if you just check in with yourself right now, I mean, which you can do all the time at any time, and find out, how is creation responding to me? And you look within, and you'll see it. There's an effusive love and joy that comes forward for you, because that's how creation sees you. So now we're going to look at interpretation versus response. Another key to help us understand what the art of thought is about. So interpretation is what you believe something else to be. Something happens in your life, you interpret why it happened and how it's going to affect you. Versus response, which is an expression of who you are. So it's not a mental process of, oh, that person smiled at me, that must mean they want something from me. That's an interpretation. That person smiled at me, that must mean they're attracted to me. A response is when something happens in your field and you respond to it and you express, someone smiled at me, I smile back. Someone smiled at me, I laugh. Whatever my response is, I notice, I respond with energy. There's a difference. It doesn't have to go through the mental process of what was that and what do I do with it. It goes inside to connect to the authentic self and then comes back as a response. Verse 19, interpretation but gives you opinions about those things that you experience. Response reveals the truth to you because it reveals the truth of you. So as we were just saying, that's because you have to go within to touch the self in order to respond from that authentic place. So it reveals yourself, actually. You must give up your attachment to interpretation before you can learn to respond. The only way you can give up interpretation is to practice the art of thought, so you can learn the difference. So it involves practice. It involves really paying attention to what your thoughts are doing and when you're interpreting things. You know, when we're trying to find the meaning underneath something or predict what's going to happen, whatever mental process we're going through, we're interpreting. And we can consciously shift over to response mode. Your first experience of the art of thought is to re-experience your memories. Now, he's asked us to do this before. This is not an idle exercise here. Verse 21, you will experience the same lessons in the same way rather than in a new way. If you meet these experiences again with the attitude of interpreting them rather than responding to them. So what is this asking us to do? So if we go through and relive our experiences, relive our memories. So if I take a memory of a time when my aunt came to visit, and I go back over that same memory, and I look for a new interpretation of what happened, I'm not going to have anything new. I'm just looking for another interpretation. I'm trading one interpretation for another interpretation. I'm not going anywhere with it. But if I go back and re-experience that memory and just check within, like, oh, what's there as I'm re-experiencing that? I'm learning through revelation. I'm learning through a direct communication with myself, capital S. So I'm not just playing over the same tapes and coming up with a different conclusion. I'm playing the tape and I'm going within the self to see how the self is responding. Because there is always a self responding. The self always is. We just are not in the habit of checking in with it. And that's all the art of thought is staying in contact with that higher self and allowing ourselves to respond from there. He goes on to say, your choice of miracles reveals your fears. Fear is doubt about yourself, which is doubt about God, obviously, because that's where we come from. So you have taken the God of love and made it the source of fear. And that's what's kept us in this double bind situation. Verse 27, this confusion is so deeply ingrained in you that it has become an aspect of yourself as a human being. So, I mean, it's just pointing out the fact that underneath everything there is this fear that whatever created us is not on our side, is making it hard for us, is causing us to be in a situation that's unpleasant and that includes suffering for whatever reason. And he's saying that this is a God of love we're talking about. That God of fear is your own creation. That's not the God that exists. Through the art of thought, the God of love will be reconciled with your human experience. So this is the promise, that as we practice and get in the habit of using the art of thought, rather than responding to the outside and finding an interpretation, seeing ourselves as an object, moving through the world in such a way, we make that switch where we are present in each moment. And as something appears on the screen of our awareness, recognizing that I am that awareness, I go within, touch that self, and respond from there. And that is the art of thought. And that is what takes us to true miracles. Thank you so much for joining me. We'll see you in the next chapter.